Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Beautifully Broken podcast. I'm here with a very special guest north of the border. We have Nathalie Niddam. Nathalie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, even though I'm north of the border.
Even though you're north of the border. Well, I grew up in Buffalo and Rochester, so I feel like a partial Canadian.
Yeah. No, you are. You've got status. Definitely.
Yeah. And now I'm in Austin, Texas, but I still have my snow hat on because I'm feeling winter. I'm feeling the Winter Olympics, which I love the Winter Olympics. I don't know about you.
I have to say that this year I have not been watching. I don't think I've watched a single minute, which is unfortunate, but that's because I've been flying around and traveling and maybe moving a titch too fast, which may have something to do with the fact that we're recording probably 2 hours after you thought we were going to be recording.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Flexibility in our scheduling.
I know. It's the beauty of working at home.
The beauty of working at home. I don't know about you, but for me, the Olympics, there's something that is so, and I've thought about this during the pandemic a lot lately. There's something so pure about sport. Competition is this microcosm for two teams or two individuals are going to battle. They're slugging it all out, giving it their all, and there'll be somebody deemed a winner, and that they're going to receive, whether it's that, the gold medal for status or a world record time. It's just very incredible to me, like how much excitement and adrenaline you can draw, especially the Olympics, because I'm like, it was 4 years ago that these people went to battle, and some of them back are a second, a third time getting ready to rock and roll again. So it's like the stakes are so high.
Yeah, no, it is. And the purity of it, to your point, is this, it's battle in the perfect context, right?
Yeah.
It's not, I don't know. It's just everybody striving for their ultimate performance in that moment. And, it's, and it's a culmination of so much dedication and perseverance and work, and you hope that there's joy in it for them too, right?
You do.
You really do hope that joy piece, which we forget quite often, even in the health space, right? We're working towards this. We're moving in a certain direction, and are we holding joy in the journey for ourselves? It's a big piece I find myself having to go back to and remind myself and remind people as well.
I'll say that watching the different sports and being aware of the dynamic between interrelational, like between the French and the Americans and the Italians and the Chinese, in between different sports is also a huge, there's a huge shift. Women's snowboarding, when like all the women were done, they did like a tackle pile of a love fest. And they just jumped on each other. They were like, and it was like, oh my God, some people lost, and some people, some people didn't even place, and it was they didn't care. It was like there was no medal. It was like, guys, we all got here, we won. And then there was women's big air competition, which is a freestyle skiing big air competition, and like the gold medal winner went over and she put her hand on the woman who was bumped into silver, and she wouldn't even look at her. I was like, you're feeling this dynamic, like, wow, this really shifted between sports and how the camaraderie will change in this. Anyways, isn't that life? Like these little microcosms, how we're all so different.
Totally. Well, and it's personalities too, right? But it is interesting in that one sport how the camaraderie transcended the competition, transcended politics, transcended all of these things. And, is it certain sports that bring that? Is it just the individuals that happen to show up this year?
Yeah.
It's hard to know, right?
It's hard to know, but the Olympics, I think, is a wonderful springboard, pun intended, for us to jump in to high performance, biohacking, human optimization, which you are a leader in. So you're on the podcast because you're a special human being. And if you were stuck in, let's do an escalator with me, we're in a long escalator in a mall. Actually, let's do like Dallas Airport. We're on one of the long escalators. Okay. Tell me if we just met what do you do, Natalie, for a living? What's your passion? How do you spend your time on the earth?
Oh, that is such a good question. And I think it's a question, the answer to that question has evolved over the last number of years that I've been in this space.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because I was talking to my husband last night. We went out for dinner and I was saying, I feel like I'm like, I don't remember what I said to him, but I spent my whole career before health in sales. I was an advertising salesperson. I sold space. I sold air. And I woke up one morning, but the other thing that I did was I was always a fitness instructor. And I started out studying human physiology in university. And I just, I kind of fell away from that and for a number of reasons ended up in a completely different space. And then I woke up one morning and decided, I'm not happy doing this. This isn't bringing me any joy. I'm just moving money from one place to another. And there's money that falls in my pocket along the way, but it doesn't feed me, right? Whereas when I would go teach a fitness class, which is the one way that I kind of held on to this health and science and helping people, it was a performance, but it was an exchange of energy. It was the ability to make a positive impact in other people's lives. And so I had a conversation with my chiropractor, who was the recipient of all my downloads of all the books I was reading and the podcasts I was listening to and all this stuff, which he would then download to his clients. And he turned to me one day and he said, Nat, you should be getting paid to do this. You're really good at this. And I thought, geez, he's right. And inside of a week, I had registered at the Institute of Holistic Nutrition in Toronto, and I was in a full-time in-class program. And even from there, which, that started to feed me, and it started to feed this desire to help other people and to teach, because I teach a lot, but it really didn't come together for me in a big way until I became, I did the human potential, the bulletproof it was called Bulletproof at the time, the human potential coach training program, which brought the whole coaching piece into the equation. Because you see, the problem with becoming a nutritionist is you spend a lot of time telling people what to do, but you're not able to help them to actually do it. Mm-hmm. And so helping them to overcome their own stories, their own obstacles, the things, because there's so much information out there. People kind of know what they should be doing. I mean, they get confused because there's too much information, but it's about how do you push past your own obstacles inside of you. And so that brought me that piece. But again, it isn't until I became a podcaster that I think I really moved into what I love to do the most, which is this sharing of information, this, hopefully reaching a large number of people and helping to bring people information. And so therefore being able to help more people more of the time. So I still have a hand in the coaching because I love that one-to-one connection and I love working with people one-to-one. But the podcasting, as I'm sure you know all too well, gives us the ability to bring ideas and concepts and share with people in a very different way. So if I had to tell you, what do I do? I'm a bridge, and I bring information to people. And what I try to do is be the bridge that connects people to the information that they need in this time, whatever it is that they need to hear right now, to help them move along in whatever journey they're in. That's kind of what I do.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. What a role of service.
It's, you know what? I'm so grateful to be able to do this. And I'm just grateful for the opportunity. And it's hard to, it's funny. I've been kind of swimming in this sea of gratitude this morning for some reason, as I've been running from one place to another and thinking to myself, man, I'm so lucky. I'm so lucky that I have the health, the energy, the bandwidth to squeeze so much into so little time. And then to be able to sit down and have an amazing conversation with someone in my field that, I've been wanting to connect with and talk to more deeply for a long time. Yeah. So I'm just like, God, I'm so freaking lucky to be able to do this.
I think about that all the time. I always go back, for some reason, I go back to like a feudalistic society in which there was like a royal family and everybody else was like a potato farmer.
Yeah.
dying at age 33 of horrible nutrient deficiencies or disease or the plague.
Yeah.
And the idea that if you think about that society, the idea of leisure time or like Instagram, let's just set aside the fact that if you gave someone the box that is like all the information in the world, that it would be like Star Trek. It'd be like, you're a witch. And then the fact that we have so much access to leisure and boats and airplanes and like just the wild stuff that we have. I mean, if you had told someone in a feudalistic society that you'll have all these things, and then you had told them you'll also be more depressed than ever, you'll be on more prescription medications, you'll be 7,000 times more likely to kill yourself from suicide, right? From chronic depression. To be clear, yes, when you kill yourself, that is suicide. That all these chronic conditions, these the weight or the cross that we're bearing as a result of luxury and technology and money.
Yeah.
Isn't that wild? Like, if you wanted to write out a fantastical story, you probably couldn't do it. Somebody like, oh, that's a little bit much.
Yeah, exactly. Are you kidding me?
Anyways, I don't want to take us there. I want to go back to your superpower. Because one of your superpowers is a little bit of this arena, the sandbox of peptides, which I've heard you speak a lot about. So on your show and your group on Facebook, why do you talk about peptides so much? And maybe we should just say for everybody at home, what's a peptide?
Yeah, what's a peptide?
What's a peptide?
A peptide, by definition, is a tiny protein. That's all it is, right? So proteins are made up of amino acids, and a peptide is an amino acids. Think of them as Legos, like the one block Legos. And so an amino acid is the single dot on the Lego. And so you have Lego pieces that are 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, 15, 20. These Legos can get really long, right? And those are proteins. Proteins in the human body is ultimately how anything happens. Without proteins, we got nothing, right?
Right.
Peptides are, by their very definition, small proteins. So depending on what definition you're working from, they're either less than 100 amino acids long or less than 50 amino acids long. And the peptides we're talking about are signaling molecules. And so they have receptors in the body. Your body it's all about communication, right? It's all about signals and communication. And the communication is what allows the body to do what it does. And what I love about peptides, and the reason why they captured my imagination so irrevocably the first time I heard about them, is that they are a way of us to tap into the ability to provide a signal to the body for the body to do what it does best. So it doesn't do for the body. So when we take a medication, we're saying, step aside, the medication is going to take care of this. The challenge is that the human body is incredibly complex. It's incredibly amazing and wise. It has this capacity that we don't understand. And so what peptides seem to be able to do in many cases is to be that little spark that initiates a cascade that allows the body to kind of take over and repair or regenerate, or mostly repair and regenerate. Or, when it comes to peptides that tap into the immune system, maybe sometimes they help the immune system to come back into balance. So that's kind of what peptides are. And that's the reason why the first time I heard about them at a conference, I was like, as a matter of fact, it was at Paleo FX. It was in Austin. And I was literally just looking for a place to sit down because I'd been in the exhibit hall talking to the exhibitors for days. And I was like, oh my God, I need to take a load off. So I went to sit down and this guy was standing there. And all of a sudden I'm like, what did he just say? And I spent the rest of the lecture kind of like gobsmacked. And I literally at one point leaned over to the guy sitting in front of me, tapped on his shoulder and like, is he kidding? And the guy goes, oh no, babe, this is all real. And anyway, that was the beginning of my journey with peptides.
That's amazing. I think I heard about them first from Ben Greenfield, probably. I was looking for support with tendon repair, inflammation, injury. And I think I started on a BPC 157 stack, maybe TB 500.
Yeah.
You know, I got the little diabetic needles and I'm injecting myself all over. And it's like, I have to be honest, my first experience was a little lackluster for me.
Yeah.
Just because I think, like all things, and I this comes up so much lately, that I think everything that we talk about on these shows works. Everything, or we wouldn't be having the conversation or wasting our time, and companies wouldn't create products.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, where does it fit in the paradigm? What else is going on? What does the terrain look like to which you're interjecting these signaling molecules?
Absolutely.
Right? And so a lot of times I think as an N=1 experiment, we'll do the thing and we'll like, oh, that sucked. These aren't good. So we'll start saying or overlaying or reaffirming the narrative that like peptides didn't work for me. And I hear people say things like that associated with different like lights or hyperbarics. It didn't work for me. And I'm always like, in my head, I'm rolling my eyes. I'm like, no, it works like it works. Like the faucet gives you water to wash dishes, right? Did you have soap? Did you have a sponge? Maybe there were other ingredients missing to the formulaic equation that needed you to help auto-regulate. But
absolutely,
so it was like, I had the Lyme and the mold and lots of like toxicity in the system. So I can only imagine why I had limited benefits. So it's not something I really jumped into. And from my understanding, I had always explained it like the in Harry Potter. It's like, how many times can you use the in the Harry Potter book series? Millions. It's like everywhere. So that was like, I was like, this small string of amino acids could help everywhere, BPC 157, whatever it was, a small string. So I was very excited about them energetically and conceptually. And I just think I've yet to find like the application and understanding on where they fit in. But I listen to your stuff often and I'm like pulled. I'm like, I got to figure out where peptides go in my life. So if that could be a starting point for us to, if you have somebody who's like, Natalie, it's like, I'm like, can't lose weight. I'm dragging ass with energy. My joints hurt. And you're going to talk about the whole picture. How do you start the conversation around peptides and what might be a right gateway drug, pun intended? All right, so let's keep going. Ladies and gentlemen at home, we actually had like a mic awareness between two podcasters, which Natalie offered me. She was like, your mic is scraping. You might want to stop that. And I have two recording systems. So anyways, I always think those things are fun for people at home.
Totally. And then they'll understand why maybe it's a little less of a smooth transition as they may have expected.
Yes.
So definitely when I introduce peptides into the conversation is within the context of what's happening with the person. And as you know, I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not here to prescribe anything, but I am here to provide information to people to help them move themselves along on this path. And certainly peptides have a place that'll occupy a place that is very new to a lot of doctors, and yet that can be incredibly powerful. But the fact of the matter is, and as you were just saying, two things are true. One is, in certain instances, applying the right peptide at the right time, even if you've got a lot going on, can very often help to move the needle for people. It can help them to feel better very quickly, so that it gives them, number one, the encouragement and the energy to then follow through with more steps, right? So sometimes it can be like, if you imagine climbing, when you're rock climbing, it gives you that first little toe hold that says, whew, okay, I can do this. I'm going to go look for the next handhold or whatever the case may be. The other thing that's also very true is, if your house is on fire and you send a contractor in to put a new kitchen in there, it's going to burn down. Yeah. It's just not going to work for you, right? So if you're introducing peptides very often into a landscape that's completely disrupted, so we're not sleeping, our stress is off the charts, We have massive inflammation going on. Our nutrition is way out of whack. There's just so much turmoil in the system. The problem is that people, and look, this is human nature. We're all looking for the magic bullet. We're all looking for that one thing that's going to turn the ship around for us.
Mm-hmm.
And the bad news is that it doesn't really exist. So for me, before I have the peptide conversation with people, and the truth is, because of what I talk about, because of my group, people come to me, tell me what peptides to use. And I'm like, okay, we need to back it up, right?
Yeah, of course.
What's going on? Why do you need peptides? Do you have a serious medical condition at play? Because if you do, we need to get a doctor on board to help us here, right? Mm-hmm. To help to prepare the terrain for the introduction of something that can really be effective and magical and move the needle for you. But at the same time, you know, sometimes when you have someone who's got a lot of maybe autoimmune issues, or they've got a lot of gut inflammation, or they've got really a very leaky gut. And so things are getting through the GI, the gut lining into the body, pissing the immune system right off day in, day out. Sometimes something like a BPC 157 and a change in diet and paying attention to all the other things that we know and talk about, it can help to like just calm things down a little bit so that they can take the next steps. It's not, you know, the beauty of BPC 157 for the gut is that its end game is to repair. But the challenge is that if you're still feeding that dysfunction from your behaviors, or there's some other imbalance at play that's causing the leaky gut, you're pouring water into a leaky bucket, right? So to me, it's really important for them to understand that. And you said something earlier that's so true. It's not that it didn't work. It's that we didn't do the work to allow it to do its job, right? So it doesn't work, whether it's PMF or AMP coil or hyperbaric oxygen therapy, or whatever the case may be. As you say, it's doing its job. It's more like, is your body ready and able to accept this, to move itself to the next level? And sometimes we're not ready. Sometimes there's other things we have to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there a favorite that you think is a nice, I know I might even know the answer. Is there a favorite starter peptide for people? Does it really depend what's going on? Or is there something that you like to test to see how the body is going to receive this?
Yeah. I mean, the bottom line is it depends. Definitely BPC 157 is a peptide that has many, many different uses. And what's interesting about BPC 157 is somebody can be taking it to address their gut, and they'll notice that sore shoulder suddenly doesn't feel so sore. Or they could be taking it for a sore knee, and all of a sudden they realize, you know, my gut seems to feel better. My digestion seems to feel better somehow. So BPC is definitely one of those. Another peptide from another part of the peptide world is called thymosin alpha-1. It actually has orphan drug status in the US, which has made it much harder to get your hands on. And it is also an approved drug in many countries in Europe. I think about 32 countries or something. And that is an immune peptide, and it's thymosin alpha-1. It's derived from the thymus gland. So it's basically like BPC 157 is a protein sequence from something that we naturally secrete in our gastric juice. Thymosin alpha-1 is a sequence from something that you would naturally, from a thymus peptide, you would naturally produce in your thymus gland. Now we know that our thymus gland involutes as we age, and it starts to happen pretty early in the game. So sometimes reintroducing one of these thymus peptides can kind of help the body to come back into balance, right? So thymosin alpha-1, its superpower, many people are walking around Th2 dominant, and their Th1 system in the immune system is kind of underperforming. You see this a lot in autoimmune diseases and things like that. And so by bringing thymosin alpha-1 into the picture, you're now kind of allowing the Th1 system to come back online and balance out that Th2 system. So those are two. The other one, which is from another sphere of the peptide world, if you will, which is bioregulator peptides, is a peptide. And these peptides are incredibly powerful. They're no more than 4 amino acids long. So these are the tiniest, like the teeniest proteins you could imagine. what they're able to do is cross into the nucleus and bind to DNA. And so what the research that's been done, much of it that's been done in Russia over the last 40 years has shown is that these peptides seem to have the ability to help the body to regenerate tissues, organs, and systems from the inside. And the one, if you threw me on a desert island and said, Nat, you only get one, I would choose apidolon, which is the bioregulator that helps the pineal gland to rejuvenate itself. Because why? Because the pineal gland, if you think about it, it's at the top of the chain here. And it is considered to be a master endocrine regulator. Doesn't do all the work, but it helps to kind of reset the orchestra, if you will. And it normalizes melatonin production. It lengthens, it activates telomerase, which helps to lengthen telomeres. It helps to reset a circadian cycle. It can, in some of the studies that were done in Russia, it improved bone density in elderly people. It improved their quality of life, their sense of well-being, and all of these things, if you think about it, are downstream effects. Better sleep, therefore better recovery. So, and the other word that's really important there, it normalizes. It doesn't boost melatonin production, it normalizes it. And this is where peptides, certain peptides are really magical, particularly the bioregulators, in that they seek to restore homeostasis to the body, as opposed to trying to boost or depress something.
Yeah, incredible. There were two big questions that came up for me. I wonder if we couldn't just skip onto like a little stone on the side of this path for a second and just talk about Th1, Th2 arms of the immune system. I think that's been a really interesting topic that's come up over the pandemic, people having a heavy-handed side of the immune system. Can you explain that again to like the layman's at home, and talk about how the immune system might operate in two different ways?
Yeah, I mean, one of them, like the one is the extrinsic, how you respond to the outside world, and one is how you're responding inside. Your immune system is responding inside. And so, what's interesting about thymosin alpha-1 is that one of the things that's been shown is that particularly in elderly people. So what happens with elderly people when they get a vaccine, for example, is very often their immune system is tired. It's old. It doesn't respond appropriately to the vaccine. It doesn't give enough of a response to the vaccine. There was actually a paper that was published that showed that thymosin alpha-1 can help to amplify, to improve an elderly person's response to a vaccine.
Beautiful.
And so it's unfortunate that this is kind of flown under the radar, right? Because in this pandemic, and I mean, whatever we believe about vaccines or don't believe, there's no doubt that vaccines for certain populations has made a really massive impact in terms of their ability to weather the storm of having of catching COVID, right? And so, and that elderly group is that group of people. So imagine if we maybe provided them with access to something like thymosin alpha-1 so that they have a more appropriate immune response to the vaccine, so that it gives them enough of immunity, or I mean, not immunity, but it helps their body to kind of respond appropriately to the virus should they catch it. Yeah. So I think that, in autoimmune conditions, very often that Th1 side of the immune system, it's depressed, it's down, it's not doing its thing. And so if we have access to something that can slowly bring it up, and this is where, people go it alone. And I do think that if you have a medical condition, you have an autoimmune condition, it's important to work with a medical doctor or someone who really knows what they're doing with peptides. Because here's the other thing I've seen in my group is people get super excited. They run out, they buy this stuff online, which, if you know your supplier, that might be fine. They buy the stuff online and they're like, okay, I read somewhere that this is the dose, and boom, they go at it. And two things happen. One, nothing. Two, massive Hertz reaction. It like completely throws them for a loop, because, the rhetoric out there is, oh, peptides are natural. Nothing can go wrong. Like, it's going to be fine. You're like, there's this weird little narrative And I think the narrative, I think what we're lacking in our society in every aspect of every conversation we have right now is nuance.
Kill me. I stole my word. I was like, nuance.
It's honestly, it's my favorite word right now.
Yeah. A really great quote from a very famous documentary filmmaker. And I could get it wrong, but I think he said that tyranny is the deliberate removal of nuance.
Yeah.
Because through this tactic, we can create this narrative that is an us versus them, good versus evil.
Yeah.
And that's not the way life is, in my experience anyway. So that was very helpful to me. And I think that so many people listen to the show with Lyme and mold. And if we are all having that conversation around mast cell activation, some level of autoimmunity, right? Maybe the Lyme is gone. Maybe it's not detectable in your fancy blood work that you sent over to Europe. However, it's very possible that a protein coating from that spirochete now lives in the synovial fluid of your joints. And there is a memory that the body is continuing to attack. So there is some level of continued inflammation for many, many people with Lyme. And that's one of the biggest questions I get is like, how are you, to pivot to, now we'll go from T1, T2. I got to track us so I can be sure to bring us back to peptides. We'll go to Instagram Reels. Cause I just said,
amazing. I love it.
Well,
I only used my first reel last week, so I'm a real virgin almost.
I've got a little mental map here on my cutting board next to me, so I'm just making little piles of things to trace us back. That in this video that I made in an Instagram Reels, just a video you put on social media, I had this video of me doing pull-ups. Well, my initial area of attack for me was really knees and hands. Hands so much so that couldn't hold a coffee cup. I would fake it till I make it. And I years and years before I ever really told anybody how bad my hands were, I was living in New York City. I often thought, if I ever got mugged, I would be trying to whack somebody with the back of my hands. I could not make a fist to defend myself, which I remember that was one of the motivators, was like, I gotta go see a rheumatologist. I was a little scared. I was like, how would I ever, if the zombie apocalypse came, I'm done. So
actually you'd fit right in.
I know I would fit right in. I could play the zombie. So the idea that this chronic inflammation exists on some level for many of these populations dealing with chronic biotoxin illness, Lyme, mold, is something that has never been brought up in the area of the pandemic. I'm aware how, sometimes, as sometimes you are compromised, but in other areas you are actually, you'll mount a better immune response to things like viruses and bacteria. It's not compromised does not necessarily mean compromised. I'm just saying, I would love the level of awareness that these are at least 500,000 people diagnosed each year newly with just Lyme. So this is a lot of people. That's every single year growing and growing and growing. And somebody might misquote me, Freddie, it's 700,000. It's Freddie, it's 330,000.
It's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people that have this T1, T2 dysregulation. So to come in and then say, now let's do this artificial intervention into your immune response, and we're going to further create a heavy-handed nature to a viral expression. To me, I've always been like, danger. I mean, I'm so oversensitive, right? My blind spot, I would say, is like, I'm like, I can eat like 7 or 6 foods or something at one point. Like, I'm just so sensitive to how imbalanced my body can be. So I think it's a really good thing to think about, that like everybody has different levels of health when we're talking about this. And to take us back to peptides, we'll go bounce back to the second lily pad with T1, T2, and like back into peptides. So we're into this train of thought, we're moving forward. It's a nuanced conversation when we're talking about any of these things from me and Natalie.
Yeah, there's no one answer. There's no, I mean, I've seen, again, I have this luxury of living in this space with 10,000 other people and observing and hearing their comments and seeing what their experience is. And I will tell you, there's no panacea. There's no one answer. And the reason is ultimately because everybody's got their unique thing going on under the hood. And there's no one thing that can really address it. And this is why, it's my hope is that there's more and more physicians who move into this functional space, who really dig into these conditions, who are able to bring, because, we land-based conventional medicine a lot.
We do.
And the fact of the matter is that there's a lot of good in conventional medicine. I wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't for conventional medicine right now. And you can't be throwing out the baby with the bathwater here. What we need is these physicians who can straddle both worlds, who can bring the best of conventional medicine, their learnings, and draw from more alternative, if you will, alternative fields, be open to the possibility that there's other things that they didn't learn about in med school that are going to enhance, sometimes replace, sometimes assist with all of these other conventional therapies that they understand, or that they're able to use more effectively because they have a greater understanding, perhaps, of how the human body works, so that they know where in the pathway am I trying to intervene to help the body kind of kick out of this, whether it's in a negative spin or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, 100%. If we go back to, to move forward from the peptide conversation, we kind of just mentioned bioregulator peptides, which are a little different. So could you give just a little descriptor on what we're talking about when we're talking about that very small string of amino acids? Mm-hmm. And you said there's a body of evidence from Russia, which is quite impressive. And I'm like, is Putin taking bioregulators?
Oh, baby, by the boatload.
Right? He looks, I'm gonna say this with all joking aside, he's been in power for so long. Isn't that wild? You think about like Gorbachev and like Putin, and like their leaders are on board for like 40 years. It's communism, but anyways.
No, but the guy looks like a beast. Right?
A beast,
you look at all other, and I never thought of this before, and I haven't seen a picture of him in a while, so I could be wrong. But the last image I have of Putin, the last time I saw an image of him, the guy looks strong and like a powerful. But you look at any other politician after they've been in power, frankly, sometimes after a year or 2 years, they've aged 10 years. Yeah. And certainly by the end of their first term, it's not the bejesus out of him. I mean, it's a game, right? The media has done this. Here's a picture of so-and-so before they came into power. They're like all happy and rosy and whatever. And here they are at the end of their reign, and they look like they're exhausted, right?
I know.
Somehow this guy's not looking so exhausted. I mean, whatever, love him, hate him, whatever you want to think about him, because I'm not going down the politics path.
No.
But at the end of the day, he's doing something right. And I think has a lot to do with the access that he has to, whether it's bioregulators or whatever else that he's doing. But the truth of the matter is that somehow this guy is finding it in himself and in his time to prioritize his vitality, like his health. So to come back to the bioregulators, do you want to say something?
No, I do, but I'm going to wait because it'll take us off on that.
Right. So bioregulators. I can be interrupted at any time. So the bioregulators are, by definition, they're only 2 to 4 amino acids long. So these are the tiniest of the tiniest peptides. And because they're so tiny, they can get into the nucleus of the cell and bind to DNA. And in that sense, increase the expression of the DNA that allows the DNA to manufacture proteins, to initiate the manufacture of proteins in the body. When Professor Cavinson, who is the doctor or the researcher doctor / who really kind of brought these to light, and this is going back 40 years, he was a young dude in the military in Russia, and the powers that be came to him and said, we need a way to address the health degradation that's happening to our cosmonauts when you send them out to space, because they age, their rate of aging increases dramatically, or the guys who are in nuclear submarines and coming back a hot mess because they've been sitting in a nuclear submarine and assaulted by radiation and whatever else. They were very worried about certain types of attack from their enemies. And they said, you 20-something-year-old dude, get this. We're giving you carte blanche. We're giving you as much money as you need. We're giving you access to all the resources that you need. You need to solve for this problem.
Mm.
I mean, he must have been obviously a fairly special person for them to come to him
Right.
with this.
Right.
But
Like the Ian Mitchell of like the Soviet Union.
right, like
They're like,
he's
here's some money, go solve this.
go whatever you need. Oh, and you need people to run tests on. We got like an entire factory of people who are really miserable over there in Siberia. Go to town.
Yeah.
And so he did a couple of really interesting experiments where he took big populations of people, one from this Gazprom, which is this literally this factory in Siberia, and half the people got multivitamins and the other half of the people got given bioregulator peptides, and really not very many. Like there was epigenetics and there was thymogen, which is the thymus bioregulator. So there's a bioregulator for the thymus gland. And as we said earlier, the thymus gland starts to involute and lose its ability to function, to really work for us in our 30s, and it just declines. Mm-hmm. So, and we've talked over the last 2 years, we've talked endlessly about how the immune system, as it ages, becomes less efficient. It's more likely maybe to overreact or underreact. And so we're not able to defend ourselves in the right appropriately to whatever it is that we're coming in contact with. So half the lucky people got the vitamins and the other half of the luckier people got the epigenetics and the thymogen. And over the course of a number of years, they realized that the people who got the epigenetics and the thymogen were less sick, they lived longer, they fared much better. So he basically upped the ante. He went after old people. And he was able to show that by just giving these elderly people the thymus peptide and epigenetics for 2 years, he improved their longevity and vitality, even 12 years out. And with a group of 75 to 85-year-olds, 6 years out, because at this point, he's not going to basically monitor them for 12 years, because most of them would be dead anyway, the decrease in all-cause mortality was dramatic. Just with those two peptides. And he may have added Visugen, which is the blood vessel bioregulator. So if you think about it, we're now helping the pineal gland to do what it does best, which has massive downstream effects in the body. We're helping the thymus gland, and it also affects the thymus, so it improves immunity. We're going after the immune system, and then we're just really improving or helping the body to rejuvenate the circulatory system. So from a systems perspective, if we think about it, so now we're able to get nutrients to the cells and systems and remove waste products, which is fundamental to function. We're able to improve function of the immune system. And then we're normalizing melatonin, we're lengthening telomeres, we're doing all of these other things that bring other benefits to the system. They didn't change their diet. They didn't work on their lifestyle. They didn't do anything, right? I mean, epigenetics even has shown in certain studies to have anti-tumor effects. So that's pretty magical.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's incredible. It would be wild to have these conversations about the terrain of human beings having a challenging time in this pandemic. It's like wild to me. I'm like, wow, there's so much great stuff out there. Anyways, yeah, it seems like the future is bright for peptides and where they fit in. I have a question about investment in financially and then like in time. Like, what is somebody looking at? Let's just make life easy. Let's talk about the bioregulator peptides, which, am I incorrect in assuming they're actually like a whole food? Is it?
Yeah,
like
so that's a really good question. I'm so glad you asked that, because here's the landscape of bioregulator peptides. There's two ways to access them. But first of all, I was going to say Putin. Professor Kavinson speaks about how bioregulator peptides are present in food. And the body has, certain, I guess, carrier proteins in the gut that will recognize these sequences and carry them across so that they don't get chopped up into their component units, right? Because if your digestion chops it up into single amino acids, then you're not left with that signaling molecule on the other side of the wall, as it were, to do the work. And then the other thing he talks about, which I think is really interesting, and I'm going to come back to the food question in a second, and I meant to say it earlier, is he talks about there's a 32% biological reserve in every tissue and organ in the system. So it's almost like this untapped potential that exists. And by using the bioregulators, we're tapping into this reserve of potential that we're not able to tap into otherwise. But to answer your question about food, if we think about where these bioregulators come from, particularly the biologic version. So there's two ways to get bioregulators. You can get a synthetic bioregulator where that amino acid sequence has been recreated in a lab. So it's literally for apidolon, it's 4 amino acids, and they've been able to recreate that chain. And don't think it's a straight line. There's, these molecules are 3D, and if they're not arranged properly, if they don't have the right charge, they're not going to work, right? Because the whole body works in this lock and key mechanism, the whole 9 yards. If your key has one little bump in the wrong place or is the mirror image of the key that you need, it's not going to happen. So number one, you've got the synthetic. The second, which I think is really fascinating, is the biologic peptides, the oral peptides that people use are actually extracts from the tissues, glands, and organs of animals. And there's 21 or 24 of these. So you've got for the heart, for the kidneys, for the pancreas, for the stomach, for the thymus gland, for the spleen, for the bone marrow, for all these things. But let's think about this for a minute. Someone who eats a full nose to tail diet, and we have those people out there right now.
Yeah, we do.
Who are taking those, the supplements by guys being made by people like, I think it's Heart and Soil by Saladino, or Ancestral Supplements. These are desiccated organs, even thyroid medication, desiccated thyroid. What's magical about those is there's no way you're not getting peptide in there. There's no way you're not getting bioregulator in there. Plus, you're also getting the cofactors, right? Like we know that in the human body, nothing works in isolation. It's a symphony. Everything's a freaking symphony. And so you need all the other bits and bobs. So it's not to say that the synthetics don't work, because they do. And in Russia, they will use the synthetics to get things moving a little bit faster sometimes, because they, for the most part, need to be injected subcutaneously. There's people developing them as sublinguals, transdermals, intranasals. I don't know. I haven't seen any real studies to see how effective they are versus the subcutaneous. But then the oral bioregulators still maintain that ability to deliver all of the other components, the cofactors, if you will, along with the bioregulators. So the way that Professor Kevinson speaks about them is he will say that the synthetic is going to be faster acting, but shorter lived in terms of results, whereas the oral bioregulator is going to be slower to do its thing, but the effects should be longer lasting. And when we go to the Heart and Soil supplements and those guys, my gut is that you're just not getting as much of the bioregulator, but you're still getting it. And if you wanted to save a ton of money, you'd put all your biases aside, and you'd start finding a farmer or a butcher who's going to provide you with all of those organs, which frankly, most of which are probably ending up on the floor. And Paul Saladino talks about this. He eats testicle, he eats liver, he eats kidney, he eats all those bits that the rest of us are like, I would never touch that stuff, right? So
raw
exactly.
testicle. Let's be clear.
Let's be clear.
Honey, dress that testicle up, and I'm eating it raw with a fork.
And put a raspberry on top.
Wild.
Yeah. Anyway, so cost-wise, you can eat organs. You can eat a full nose to tail diet. Are you going to get the full, where you're going to find pineal gland, I'm not exactly sure, like who's going to go find it, right? But so your first level is eating organs. Your second level is getting your hands on those supplements, the Heart and Soil, whatever the case may be. It's pretty, it's an investment, but it's affordable.
Yeah.
See how you do. The next level, I will say that the synthetics are way cheaper than the biologics, way cheaper, because you don't need a lot, right? There's a narrative out there about needing 5 to 10 milligrams a day for 10 to 20 days. It turns out I interviewed Jean-François Tremblay from CanLab, which is a lab in Montreal that synthesizes a lot of these bioregulators as well as other peptides. And he went back to Russian literature and figured out that there was a mistake in translation. And they didn't mean 10 milligrams. What they actually meant was 100 micrograms.
Yeah.
So, which is like a tenth of a milligram, right?
Yeah.
So people have been like mega dosing this stuff. The cool thing is, as far as we know, to no ill effect, but it's wasteful. So if all you need is 100 micrograms of something, it really doesn't cost much. So it's much more cost effective. The oral bioregulators, it just, again, it's going to depend on how many you use, what you're using them for, and the whole 9 yards. But, you know, you're looking at a 10-day course is going to cost you like anywhere from 50 to 60 bucks of one bioregulator. And typically you would use them in stacks. You would use more than one. So it can add up pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think I did the one that you had recommended. Like I did the whole shebang. I did like the thymus and the circulation and the testicles, all the things. And I think I'd done it for like 30 days, 60 days. It was an investment. It was like 600 bucks, 700 bucks, something like that.
That's money.
Yeah. And so I would love to hear from your experience, like in your body, what have been some of the benefits of using peptides or the bioregulators? If you want to niche down on one that you think has been most profound for you, maybe that's also helpful.
Yeah, so I'm an interesting cat because I'm the canary in the coal mine. So there are certain peptides I can use, and there are other peptides I can't touch because my immune system is like, yeah, maybe you look like something I know, but I don't like you. You're not the real thing. So there are certain peptides that people love, like thymosin beta 4, which is TB500. I can't touch that thing. My body blows up.
Wow.
CJC ipamorelin, which are the growth hormone secretagogues, which is a really cool category of peptide for anti-aging, for healing from injury and all that kind of stuff. So that what that little combination does is it sends a signal to your brain to upregulate the production of growth hormone. And it's really cool because whereas taking exogenous growth hormone essentially overrides your body's own feedback loops, it stops your own production of growth hormone. Here we're tapping into the body and encouraging it, giving it a little nudge to say, hey, can I get some more of that stuff while I'm sleeping maybe? And the body generally acquiesces. However, my immune system is like, no, we'll have none of that. So I did, when I first started peptides, I used BPC 157, thymosin beta 4, and CJC ipamorelin, which is a very classic repair stack. And you know, a lot of people will use it even as an anti-aging stack because it helps the body to repair damage and all that kind of stuff. Plus, with the growth hormone secretagogues, really good for skin, really good for sleep. Like it's good for your brain. It's good for so many things. And during that time, I was still doing CrossFit at the time. And I, for a very brief moment in time, until my immune system mounted its defenses, I was like indestructible. I never got sore. I recovered from my workouts really well. It was awesome. Yeah, it was great. So that was really profound until I couldn't. Epidolon is another one. Now I have to admit that when I felt the effect the most is when I mega dosed it, when I was still using it at that very high dose. And I remember the first cycle that I did, I'd be sitting and, you know, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I would literally nod off, which I never do. I've had a philosophical opposition to napping since I was 2. So I don't sleep during the day. And I was sitting there going like, what is wrong with me? And it was kind of overriding my system and resetting certain things. So I learned in that 20-day cycle, we're going to go to bed pretty close to when the sun, you know, within a couple hours after the sun sets, and we're then going to wake up. And it kind of reset my circadian rhythm in a certain way. But here's the thing. I had to work with it because I could still choose to work against it and fight it. Right. Yeah. So I would say that those are those are the 2 big examples I can give you. I've definitely seen BPC 157 be a real game changer for people. But again, you have to be ready. It has to be the right thing for you at the time that you're using it. Yeah. You know, and I can't stress that enough because it can be the best. It's like anything else, you know, anything else, like it can be the best supplement on the planet and it could just not be what you need right now. Or even worse, it could be what you don't need. Yeah. Yeah. It keeps, I keep getting this, the vision of the easy button. It just doesn't exist. You know, there is no bypass for what we're suffering from. Really, you have to dig in. You got to do the education.
You have to have a good guide. You need to get clear on what your body needs energetically, physically, and spiritually.
Yes.
At the end of the day, right? And these tools are so amazing. They can really help us. Like you said, you're in a building burning. I need the fire out now. Sometimes we can get great assistance from these chronic pain and resetting the circadian rhythm, our melatonin production, which can be, all these things can be lifelong crosses to bear unless you figure it out. But you've got to do the work, and you've got to have I think I keep coming back to this again and again. I'm like, why are we not developing like I know we are independently, but a more robust standard for what is the functional health coach, the functional medicine health coach? Because at the end of the day, holding people to accountability, holding up that mirror with compassion, love, empathy, understanding emotional trauma and wounding in the overlap of physical training and peptides and the amp coil and red light, that's the fix.
Yeah. And right. I'm so glad you said that, because mindset, where your heart is, how you're able to receive these things, like you can't override the mind. And if the mind needs attention and the soul needs attention and the heart needs attention, we owe it to ourselves to do that work, at least alongside the physical. At least alongside. I'm not going to say you have to do it first, because if you're feeling like hell, you need help in that as well, because that helps you on the other side too. But so often we push this aside and we just work on the physical piece, and because it's easier, right? Let's face it, the hardest work to do is the spiritual and the emotional.
Yeah, it's hard.
I mean, who am I telling? You know this better than anybody.
And it comes in waves and cycles, and I forget it, and then I learn it again, and I forget it, and I learn it again. So it is a wave. I'd love to, as we creep up on our hour here, Natalie, I'd love to, and I want to be respectful of your Saturday. I'd love to know, aside from peptides, as an avid biohacker, what are a couple things that you're just loving on right now that you're using to optimize wellness and energy?
Ooh, I am loving, honestly, I'm loving on sleep in my own bed. It's gonna sound ridiculous. I just spent a couple of weeks away, and unfortunately, I ended up in a place that wasn't the greatest, and physically, and my sleep I struggled with sleep, and sleep is something I took for granted because I sleep really well. And I've got a sleep stack that is phenomenal and got me through those 2 weeks. So, and I'll share it with your listeners here because I do think it's quite magical.
Let's do it.
What I do before bed quite often is I will take either a little bit of yogurt, or if I'm really attached to that fast that I'm doing overnight, I'll even do this with water, and I'll take a teaspoon of glycine. And I'm a big proponent of spermidine as a supplement. So I use Primadine, which I love that stuff. And it actually tastes really good. So if I'm doing the yogurt, I will do literally 1 or 2 tablespoons at the most of yogurt with a teaspoon of glycine. I'll split open 3 capsules of Primadine. I'll take some cinnamon, I'll smush it around, and I eat that right before bed. And it never fails. My deep sleep always goes up.
I gotta check it out.
Oh my God, that stack totally got me through those 2 weeks. But when I came home and my husband, who's learned now, just don't buy her anything shiny. Ask her what she wants, because it's going to be a sauna or a red light or something weird that I'm not the designer shoe girl. I've never have been. So anyway, so for my birthday / Hanukkah / Christmas / something else, we got a new mattress. So I got this amazing mattress, and I'm supposed to be recording a podcast soon with Chili Pad. So I got the Uller to try out. When I came back home and slept in my bed, the last several nights, my sleep scores have been off the charts. And I think it's being back in my own space and having been had the luxury of creating this sleep nest that allows me to get that restorative sleep every night. So that's what I'm really loving right now. I love the sleep stack when I need it. I love that. I actually think it's the Uller that I have. I love that chilly, the cooling of the mattress, having a great mattress. And then I've got my Flex Beam, which is my BFF. I never go anything without her, anywhere without her.
Amazing. So a little red light therapy, some spermidine, a little bit of protein mixed in, and some glycine. Tell me, and for the listeners at home, the value of glycine in your evening stack.
It's an amino acid. There you go. One of those little amino acid guys. And it just helps to improve your sleep. I actually, you know what? I wish I could tell you mechanistically what it's doing.
That's all right.
I don't think I remember. It may have something to do with the GABAergic system. So it helps to calm the mind. I could be wrong about that. Oh, actually, and the other thing that I will add to it is magnesium.
Is your what?
Magnesium.
Magnesium. And what's your favorite form of magnesium that you're playing around with right now?
So the one that I use, the supplement that I'm using right now has 7 different forms of magnesium in it. So it kind of takes a lot of the guesswork out. Magnesium is a really interesting compound, and it will have affinity for different parts of the body and different processes, depending on what it's bound to. So there's, I think it's magnesium with L3 and 8 that will actually get to the brain. So it'll cross the blood-brain barrier. You've got other types of magnesium that are better for muscles and this, that, and the other thing. So this particular formula has 7 kinds of magnesium. And so it just seemed, for me, it kind of takes the guesswork. I don't have to worry about which one, I have enough supplements in my drawer. The last thing I need is to start worrying about, am I taking this magnesium now or that magnesium now? There's a point of sanity we have to hit, right?
Great. So you've got a good stack there. And then finally, to close it out, Natalie, what I'm going to have 2 for you, actually. What is it, the Beautifully Broken podcast, what does it mean for you to be beautifully broken? What comes up for you?
That's a good question. And I'm going to say to be beautifully broken is to embrace the parts of you that still need to grow and evolve, and accept them as the whole that you are right now. Because I think that every one of us is working on stuff. We're all working through our stuff. And the temptation is to berate ourselves and to judge ourselves. And particularly when we're in the field that we're in, where people perceive us as, some degree of leaders, or they're listening to us, and we take this on as a big responsibility. And it's like, well, I shouldn't be dealing with this, or I shouldn't have to fix this, or I should have my shit together, bottom line. And the truth is that we've all got stuff we need to work on, we can improve. And so embracing those broken bits, embracing those bits that are not quite fully polished, and accepting them as part of the package that we bring to other people, and the package that we bring to ourselves and to our families and our loved ones, and not judging ourselves too harshly for it. I think that's what being beautifully broken is. It's accepting the not so perfect bits.
Amazing. And then if you could, I'm going to offer you a magic wand, and you can gift something to the people of the world in 2022, going into a brand new year here. It's February. What would you offer the people of the world? You can gift them anything.
I would give them the ability to, how am I going to say this? I know exactly what I want to gift them with. And it's kind of 2 things, but it's nuance and compassion. I think everybody's got to get off the one side they're on. I want them to join those of us who live in the middle. And somebody who articulates that really well is Peter Attia, in a couple of podcasts that he recorded recently. And just understand that for the most part, nobody's out to hurt anyone. We all kind of stop with the blocked ears and only screaming your point of view. Open up hear other people, accept where they're coming from, and allow yourself to navigate with compassion and with nuance through this kind of mess we're in right now, because I think that's the only way we're going to get out of it. I think we're just going to have to be more forgiving and not so black and white all the time. And, I'm a person who's always considered myself to be super black and white. And as I get older, I'm learning that maybe that's not the best way to be.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of work to be done there. There's amazing discoveries people can have in that space. And I think, I would also say the only thing I'll add to that beautiful, beautiful gift to the world is you don't have to make those explorations and discovery on social media.
Yeah.
You can do it in the safety of a journal. You could do it with your best friend.
Yeah.
I will often do that. People have they've held wildly different belief systems than me. And I see their narrative online and I see mine and I'm like, I haven't talked to you. I'm like, I'll just like, can we have a conversation? I want to ask you something.
Yeah.
I'm like, can I like come out with you like about something and can we have a conversation? Because I know we're good friends. I know you love me. I love you. I love your family. And I want to have this conversation. And it's went so well. So I would say if people want to do the work that you offered, which is develop some nuance and see if you can leave the extreme edges and lean into the middle, that maybe start playing with that work in a relationship or a container that is safe. Friendship, certain family members, not all of them, but probably not on social media, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Because you're setting yourself up to actually go to war, which we talked about in the beginning of the podcast. Like that safe space to do that could be the Olympic Games, not always. And set yourself up for success to make that exploration.
Absolutely. And conversation and communication. And I think and social media, not to go on too much longer here, but social media has been such a gift in so many ways, but obviously it's such a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
It's anyway, I think that responsible use of social media is probably maybe another gift we can gift to the world if we could.
Totally. Let's make that course. It's been such a treat. We'll do more. I intuit you're going to be a regular on the podcast. I would love it if you'd be a regular on the podcast. You're so brilliant. I love talking to you. I feel like we share the same cloak or cape of citizen scientist who just wants to keep learning. So I can't wait for like part 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Thank you, Natalie.
Thank you, Freddie. Thank you for hosting me. And I can't wait to have you on my podcast and turn the mic on you.
I can't wait. I love it.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.